I never thought I'd see that village again. After all these years, after everything I've done, it seemed like some cruel joke that I'd be called back there for one final exorcism. My hands shook as I clutched the letter, the words blurring together. It was a plea for help from a remote mountain village, a place that time had forgotten and that I had tried my best to forget as well. But the name of the village sent a chill down my spine, awakening memories I had buried deep, memories of a battle I thought I had won long ago. The journey itself was a test. The roads were rough, barely more than dirt paths carved into the mountainside. The air grew thinner and colder as I climbed higher, as if the very earth wanted to keep me out. I could feel something dark and malevolent watching me from the shadows of the towering trees. It was as though the village didn't want me to come. Or perhaps it was the thing waiting there that wished I would turn back. But I couldn't. I had spent my life fighting the darkness, and this was my last chance to set things right, to leave this world with some semblance of peace. As I approached the village, I felt an unnatural heaviness in the air, something more than just the weight of the years and my own frailty. The village was a cluster of ancient, weather-beaten houses huddled together against the mountainside like a flock of terrified sheep. The place reeked of fear, and the villagers, those few I saw, looked hollow, their faces drawn with exhaustion and despair. Their eyes followed me, filled with a silent plea and a deep, unsettling dread. It was as if they knew what awaited me and pitied me for it. I was led to the home of the family who had sent for me. The father was a young man, though his face was lined with worry, making him appear far older. His wife was even younger, a fragile, pale creature who looked as though she hadn't slept in days. They spoke in whispers, their voices trembling as they described what had been happening to their daughter. It was the usual signs: cold spots in the house, strange noises at night, and the girl herself, once so full of life, now withdrawn, her eyes empty, as though something had reached inside her and snuffed out the light. When I finally saw the girl, lying in a darkened room, bound to her bed by her terrified parents, a jolt of recognition shot through me. Her body was frail, her skin pale and slick with sweat, but her eyes were black, deep voids that seemed to reach out and grab hold of my soul. It was then that I knew this was no ordinary possession. The spirit within her was something I had encountered before. Decades ago, when I was a younger man, full of righteous fury and unshakable faith, I had faced this very demon. I had thought I had destroyed it, banished it back to the hell it had crawled out from. But here it was again, staring back at me through the eyes of an innocent girl, mocking me with the same cruel, twisted smile that had haunted my dreams for years after our first encounter. My heart pounded in my chest as the demon began to speak, using the girl's voice but twisting it into something unnatural, something vile. It knew me. It remembered me. It taunted me with the failures of my past, with the sins I had tried so hard to atone for. The demon's words sliced through me, reopening old wounds I had thought long healed. It was then that I realized this exorcism would not just be a battle for the girl's soul. It would be a battle for my own as well. The girl's parents watched me with eyes full of desperation as I prepared for the ritual. Their fear was palpable, a living thing that clung to the walls of that small, stifling room. The air was thick with the scent of incense and holy oil, but it did nothing to mask the stench of decay that seemed to seep from the girl's body. I could feel their hope resting on my shoulders, a heavy burden that pressed down on me, making it difficult to breathe. They had no idea what we were truly up against. How could they? I barely understood it myself. When I began the ritual, the demon's response was immediate and violent. The girl's body convulsed, her back arching off the bed as if an unseen force was trying to tear her apart from the inside. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and a guttural scream ripped from her throat, a sound so inhuman it made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I had seen possessions before, but this was different. This was pure, unbridled evil. The demon laughed through the girl's lips, a chilling, distorted sound that echoed through the room. It taunted me, spitting out words in a language that seemed to claw at the edges of my mind, threatening to drag me into madness. It spoke of our past encounter, reminding me of how I had failed to destroy it all those years ago. With each word, The memories came flooding back, memories I had spent a lifetime trying to bury. I remembered the first time I faced this demon, back when I was just starting my ministry. I was young, arrogant, believing that my faith was unshakable, that I could overcome any darkness. But that exorcism had shattered those illusions. The demon had been cunning, toying with me, forcing me to confront my own doubts and fears. It had whispered secrets to me, revealing things about my past, about the man I had once been, that I had hoped to forget. And when I finally drove it out, I was left with the gnawing feeling that I had not truly defeated it, that it had merely retreated, waiting for the right moment to return. And now, here it was, stronger and more determined than ever. It knew my weaknesses, my sins, and it was determined to use them against me. As I recited the prayers, my voice trembling with the weight of the years and the knowledge of what I had failed to do, the demon twisted the girl's body into unnatural shapes, her bones cracking with sickening snaps. The sight was horrific, but it was the words that the demon spoke that truly terrified me. "You thought you could escape me, Elias," it hissed, using her voice, twisting it into something grotesque. "You thought you could hide from your past, but I have been waiting, biding my time. You and I, we are bound together. Your soul is mine, just as much as hers is." I faltered, my heart pounding in my chest. It was right. I had never truly defeated it. I had only postponed the inevitable. And now, in this tiny, forgotten village, far from the world I had known, it had come to collect its due. I could feel my strength waning, my body failing me as the illness that had ravaged me for months sapped what little energy I had left. But I couldn't give up. Not yet. I had to save this girl. I had to find some way to end this, once and for all. But as the demon's laughter filled the room, I began to wonder if I had the strength to face it again, to confront the darkness within myself that it had so cruelly unearthed. The girl's eyes snapped open, her gaze locking onto mine, and for a brief moment, I saw the real her, buried deep beneath the demon's influence. She was terrified, pleading silently for help, and in that moment, I knew that this battle was about more than just her soul. It was about mine as well. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. This time, I couldn't afford to fail. Not again. The demon's words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the price of failure. But as I raised the crucifix, determination surged through me. I had to believe that there was still hope, that redemption was possible, even for someone like me. I had to believe that this time, I could finally defeat the demon that had haunted me for so long. But deep down, a part of me feared that it was already too late. As the exorcism continued, the line between the past and present began to blur. Every word the demon spat at me brought back memories I had tried so hard to forget. It was as if the walls of that room were closing in, trapping me in a nightmare that I had already lived through once before. My prayers became mechanical, the Latin rolling off my tongue almost involuntarily, but the meaning felt hollow, like I was reciting an old script without truly believing in the power behind the words. Images from that first exorcism flooded my mind. I was a young priest then, so confident, so eager to prove myself. I had been assigned to a small parish in a rundown neighborhood, and when the call came about a girl possessed by an evil spirit, I jumped at the chance. I saw it as a test of my faith, a way to demonstrate that I was ready to take on the forces of darkness. But I had no idea what I was walking into. The demon was unlike anything I had ever encountered before. It seemed to know everything about me, my fears, my doubts, the sins I had committed before I found my calling. I remember the way it looked at me through the eyes of the girl it had possessed, a cold, knowing gaze that sent shivers down my spine. It spoke to me in a voice that was both hers and not hers, whispering things that no one else could have known. It told me that I was unworthy, that I was a hypocrite, that my faith was a lie. And the worst part was, a part of me believed it. I had struggled with my faith for years, questioning whether I was truly worthy of the priesthood, whether I could really stand up to the forces of evil. That exorcism had left me shaken, and although I had eventually driven the demon out, I was never the same afterward. The doubts it had planted in my mind took root, growing stronger with each passing year. Now, standing over another possessed girl in a different time and place. I felt those same doubts gnawing at me. The demon sensed my hesitation, my fear, and it used it against me. "You never defeated me, Elias," it sneered. "You only postponed the inevitable. You thought you could outrun your past, but here it is, waiting for you. You were always mine." I gripped the crucifix tighter, trying to focus on the task at hand. But the memories wouldn't stop. They crashed over me like a wave, pulling me under, making it hard to breathe. I could see the faces of those I had failed, people who had come to me for help, only to find that I was powerless to save them. Their eyes haunted me, accusing, full of pain and betrayal. And behind them all, I could see the face of the girl from that first exorcism, her eyes wide with terror as the demon fought to keep its hold on her. I had saved her, but at what cost? The demon hadn't been destroyed. It had simply bided its time, waiting for the right moment to strike again. I felt a sudden sharp pain in my chest, and I staggered, clutching at my heart. The illness that had been eating away at me for months was worsening, and the strain of the exorcism was pushing me to my limits. But I couldn't stop now. If I didn't save this girl, no one else would. I had to find a way to push through the pain, to silence the doubts that were threatening to overwhelm me. But the demon wasn't done with me yet. It began to reveal things, dark secrets from my past that I had buried so deep that even I had almost forgotten them. It spoke of my younger years, of the sins I had committed before I became a priest, sins that I had never truly atoned for. I had always told myself that the work I did as an exorcist was enough, that it would balance the scales. But the demon knew better. It dredged up every mistake, every regret, and threw them in my face, laughing as it watched me struggle. I could feel my resolve weakening. The demon's words were like poison, seeping into my soul, feeding on my guilt and fear. I began to doubt whether I could truly save this girl, whether I had the strength to defeat this evil once and for all. My prayers faltered, the words sticking in my throat as the memories overwhelmed me. I was no longer in that room. I was back in the past, reliving my failures, feeling the crushing weight of my inadequacy. But then, through the haze of doubt and pain, I heard a voice, a small, desperate voice calling out to me. It was the girl, fighting to break free from the demon's grasp. Her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper, but it was enough to snap me out of my reverie. She needed me. I couldn't let my past destroy her future. With a renewed sense of purpose, I pushed the memories aside and focused on the present. I wasn't that young, inexperienced priest anymore. I had faced darkness before, and I had survived. This time would be different. This time, I would finish what I started all those years ago. I had to believe that, or else everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, would be for nothing. And that was a fate I refused to accept. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the darkness pressing down from all sides. The girl's screams had become a low, guttural growl, her body contorting in ways that defied nature. I could see the strain in her limbs, the way her muscles tightened and her bones creaked. But it was her eyes that truly haunted me. Those eyes, once innocent and full of life, were now black voids, windows into a darkness that seemed endless. Each time I spoke the holy words, I could feel the demon pushing back, resisting with a strength that was far beyond anything I had ever encountered before. My body was failing. I could feel it in every strained breath, every tremor that ran through my hands. The illness that had ravaged me for months was now making itself known in full force, and I knew I didn't have much time left. My vision blurred, spots dancing in front of my eyes as the pain in my chest became almost unbearable. But I couldn't stop, not when I was so close. The demon sensed my weakness and seized the opportunity. It began to speak through the girl, its voice no longer a mere mockery, but something deeper, more sinister. "You're dying, Elias," it whispered, the words slithering into my ears like a serpent. "Your God has abandoned you. You're nothing but a shell, a broken man grasping at straws. Do you really think you can save her? You couldn't even save yourself." I fought to ignore it, to focus on the exorcism, but the words hit their mark. They cut deep, dredging up all the fears I had tried to bury. Was this really my last stand? Was this how it would end? Alone in a forgotten village, facing a demon I had failed to destroy decades ago? I had dedicated my life to fighting the darkness, but now, at the end, I was nothing more than a sick, broken old man, clinging to the last threads of his faith. But then, in the midst of my despair, I felt something stir within me. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A flicker of the faith that had once burned so brightly in my soul. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and tightened my grip on the crucifix. "You don't scare me," I muttered, though my voice shook. "You've had your fun, demon, but this ends now." The demon laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "You think you can defeat me?" it taunted. "You're a fool, Elias. You were always a fool. Your faith is weak, your God is absent, and soon, you will be nothing more than a memory. Give up now, and I might spare you a little pain." But I couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything. I had come too far, sacrificed too much. The girl's life was hanging by a thread, and I was the only one who could save her. The only one who could end this nightmare. With a surge of determination, I began the exorcism anew, pouring everything I had left into the words, each syllable a weapon against the darkness that filled the room. The crucifix in my hand seemed to glow with a light of its own, pushing back against the shadows, forcing the demon to retreat, if only slightly. The girl screamed, her voice breaking through the demon's hold, and for a moment, I saw her again. The real her, the innocent soul trapped beneath the layers of evil. She looked at me, her eyes filled with terror, but also with hope. She was begging me, pleading with me to save her, to end her suffering. I couldn't fail her. I wouldn't. As the demon fought back, I felt its rage, its desperation. It was losing its grip, and it knew it. But it wasn't going to go down without a fight. The room shook, the walls vibrating as the demon unleashed its full fury. Objects flew across the room, crashing into walls, shattering into pieces. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't afford to. Not now. The demon's voice grew louder, more frantic. "You can't win, Elias. You're too weak. You always were. You're nothing without me." But I kept going, the prayers spilling from my lips in a steady stream. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat sending waves of pain through my body, but I pushed it aside. The only thing that mattered was driving this demon out, saving the girl's soul, and maybe, just maybe, finding some semblance of redemption for myself. And then, finally, I felt it. The shift. The moment when the demon's power began to wane, its grip on the girl loosening. It screamed in rage, thrashing wildly as it tried to hold on. But it was no use. The light of the crucifix burned brighter, filling the room with a warmth that chased away the cold, and I knew, in that moment, that I was winning. I was driving it out. But as the demon's hold weakened, it lashed out one final time, with a force that nearly brought me to my knees. It was a last-ditch effort to take me down with it, to drag me into the darkness where it dwelled. And as I felt my strength fading, I realized that this was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. My life, the girl's life, and my soul hung in the balance. With every ounce of strength I had left, I raised the crucifix high, shouting the final prayer with a voice that echoed through the room, drowning out the demon's screams. And then, with a deafening roar, the darkness shattered. The demon was gone, banished back to whatever hell it had crawled out from, leaving behind nothing but silence and the faint sound of the girl's labored breathing. I collapsed to the floor, my body shaking with exhaustion. The girl was safe, for now. But as I lay there, gasping for breath, I knew that the battle was far from over. The demon had been driven out, but its words still echoed in my mind, a dark reminder of the shadows that still lingered in my soul. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The real fight was yet to come. I lay on the cold, hard floor, my body trembling from the exertion of the exorcism. Every breath felt like it might be my last. The silence in the room was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that had filled it moments before. The girl was quiet now, her chest rising and falling slowly as she regained consciousness. I should have felt relief, a sense of victory, but all I felt was a deep, gnawing dread. The demon was gone, but something still wasn't right. The air was thick with an oppressive heaviness, as if the very walls of the house were holding their breath, waiting for something. I tried to push myself up, but my limbs felt like lead, my body drained of any remaining strength. The illness had taken its toll, and I knew I didn't have much time left, but there was something I needed to understand before I could rest. Something the demon had hinted at during the exorcism that I couldn't shake. The girl's parents rushed into the room, their faces a mixture of fear and hope. They knelt beside their daughter, whispering her name, tears streaming down their faces as they realized she was still alive. I watched them through half-lidded eyes, the joy on their faces contrasting sharply with the unease growing in my chest. They thanked me, their voices trembling with gratitude, but I could barely register their words. My mind was elsewhere, grappling with the puzzle the demon had left behind. As the parents tended to their daughter, I forced myself to sit up, wincing as pain shot through my chest. I could feel the sickness spreading, a cold, creeping numbness that was slowly overtaking my body. But there was no time to dwell on it. I needed answers. I motioned for the father to come closer, my voice barely more than a whisper as I asked him about the village. Something was wrong here, something that went beyond the possession. The father hesitated, his eyes darting nervously around the room, as if afraid to speak. But I could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear I had seen in the faces of the other villagers when I arrived. He knew something that had been weighing on him, and I needed to know what it was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he began to speak. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as he told me about the village's history. It was a cursed place, he said, a village that had been plagued by darkness for generations. The curse was old, older than anyone could remember, and it had claimed the lives of many before. Every few decades, the curse would awaken, taking a life, demanding a sacrifice to keep the village safe. And every time, a priest would be sent to perform an exorcism to cleanse the village of its evil. But none of them had ever left the village alive. My blood ran cold as I listened to his words, the pieces falling into place. The demon I had faced wasn't just any demon. It was the embodiment of the village's curse, a malevolent force that had been feeding off the fear and suffering of the villagers for centuries. And the priests, including myself, were the sacrifices it demanded. We had been lured here, not to save the village, but to die in its place. The father's eyes were full of guilt as he spoke, his voice trembling as he confessed that they had known I wouldn't survive. The villagers had hoped that by sending for me, they could appease the curse, that my death would buy them a few more years of peace. I should have been angry, but all I felt was a deep, crushing sadness. I had come here thinking I could make a difference, that I could save this girl and redeem myself in the process. But it had all been a lie. My entire life's work had been leading to this moment, to this cursed village where I was nothing more than a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. I looked at the girl, her face peaceful now as she slept, and a bitter smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. I had saved her, but at what cost? The curse wasn't gone. It had merely been appeased, satisfied with my impending death. And when the time came again, it would demand another sacrifice, another life to keep it at bay. The father's words echoed in my mind as the reality of my situation sank in. I had been a fool to think I could defeat this evil, that I could find redemption in the exorcism of a single soul. The darkness that plagued this village was older and more powerful than anything I had ever faced, and it had claimed me as its own. I leaned back against the wall, my body growing weaker with each passing second. The father's words faded into the background as my vision blurred, the room spinning around me. I had come here seeking redemption, but instead, I had found my end. My life was slipping away, and with it, any hope I had of escaping the shadow that had haunted me for so long. As the darkness closed in, I felt a strange sense of calm. The battle was over, the demon defeated, but I knew that the real enemy had always been the curse itself. It had claimed me, just as it had claimed the priest before me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it, All I could do was accept my fate and hope that, in some small way, my sacrifice would bring the village a few more years of peace. But deep down, I knew that the curse would never truly be gone. It would wait, as it always had, for the next priest to come, for the next soul to be sacrificed in its name, and the cycle would begin again. An endless loop of suffering and death, with no end in sight. The darkness enveloped me, a thick, suffocating void that seemed to swallow all light and sound. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, each beat a dull thud that echoed through the silence. My body was shutting down, the sickness and exhaustion finally taking their toll. As I lay there, on the edge of death, I found myself staring at the ceiling, the dim light from a single candle casting long, flickering shadows across the room. I was barely aware of the girl's parents anymore, their voices distant, like echoes from another world. My thoughts drifted, slipping between past and present, between life and whatever awaited me beyond. In those final moments, I was visited by a face I hadn't seen in decades, her face. The first person I had failed, the one who had set me on this path. She appeared before me, not in the flesh, but as a vision, a reminder of the sins I had tried so hard to forget. Her eyes were sad, full of a sorrow that seemed to reach into the deepest parts of my soul. She didn't speak, but I could hear her voice in my mind, whispering words I had long buried. "You thought you could atone," she said, her voice soft but piercing. "You thought you could make it right. But you can't change the past, Elias. No matter how hard you try, no matter how many lives you save, the shadows of your sins will always follow you." Her words cut through me, sharper than any blade. She was right. I had spent my entire life running from my past, trying to bury it under a mountain of good deeds, of exorcisms and prayers. But no amount of redemption could erase the guilt that had gnawed at me all these years. The truth was, I had never truly been at peace. I had been haunted, not just by the demons I faced, but by the knowledge that I had failed when it mattered most. I reached out to her, my hand trembling, but she remained just out of reach, her form flickering like the candlelight around me. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." She didn't answer, just watched me with those sad eyes, and then, slowly, she began to fade. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows lengthening as the light dimmed further. I was alone again, with nothing but the weight of my sins and the curse that had claimed me. But just as I felt myself slipping away, another figure appeared. This time, it was the girl I had just saved. She stood at the foot of my bed, her eyes no longer black voids, but clear and bright, filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time: hope. She looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and sadness, and in that moment, I realized that despite everything, I had made a difference. I had saved her. Her soul was free, even if mine was not. "You did what you could," she said, her voice a gentle balm to my tormented mind. "You gave me another chance. That's more than most would have done." Tears welled in my eyes, a rare emotion for a man who had seen so much darkness. "But what about the curse? The village? It's not over, is it?" She shook her head slowly, a sad smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "No, it's not over. The curse will remain. It will take another and another, until it's finally broken. But that's not your burden anymore, Father. You've done all you can." Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink of despair. I had spent so long trying to atone, to find some way to balance the scales, that I had forgotten what it meant to accept the things I couldn't change. The curse was not something I could defeat. It was a force beyond my control, an ancient darkness that would continue its cycle long after I was gone. But in saving her, in giving her another chance at life, maybe I had done something that mattered, something that would echo beyond my own death. The girl reached out, her hand resting on mine, and I felt a warmth spread through me, a final gift of peace before the end. "Rest now, Father," she said softly. "Your fight is over." And with those words, I felt the last of my strength leave me. The darkness that had threatened to consume me finally receded, replaced by a calm I hadn't known in years. I closed my eyes, the weight of the world lifting from my shoulders. My time was up, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to let go. As I took my final breath, the room around me seemed to blur, the edges of reality fading into a soft, comforting light. The pain, the fear, the guilt, they all melted away, leaving behind only a deep, profound sense of relief. I had done what I could, and that was enough. The curse might continue, but it would do so without me. And then there was nothing, just a quiet, peaceful silence that stretched into eternity. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe, like, and comment, and check out the next story.